Bonjour, Helena. I would like to speak about the Lauder, Leonard Lauder collection, and above all about the Klimt. What can you say? Because we remember there was other Klimt sold to the brother, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, we remember in 2006 the major restitution of the five paintings from Adela Bloch-Bauer that came out of Vienna. And it was Ronald who managed to acquire the iconic and, incredible golden Bloch-Bauer that hangs now in the Neue Gallery, that at the time made a world record price for any work of art. It was sold privately for a price in the region of $135 million. And, now we have another great group of three Klimt paintings coming from the brother, Leonard, from his estate. Absolutely extraordinary in quality and
But is it a family passion? How can we
yeah,
say?
very much. I mean, you could say, I mean, it's both a personal connection because for Leonard, he had Austro-Hungarian roots, so there was a strong pull from Vienna culturally, the interest in the art. And it was actually Leonard who first met Serge Sabarsky, who was the great German and Austrian art dealer, also from Vienna, who emigrated to New York and brought the art of Austria and Germany to to an American public. It was he who actually introduced Leonard to the possibility to acquire. I mean, he actually sourced two of the three works that are in this group come via Serge Sabarsky, and then Leonard in turn introduced him to Ronald. And so, there is definitely this passionate interest in Viennese art.
And do we have an idea of the price he paid for them?
I don't actually. They were so the first one he bought was in 1978. They were all bought privately, so they're not public auction records. They were all, none of these three paintings has been at auction. And the first, which was bought in 1978, and then which was the Forest Slope, the Unteracher Mattersee, and then the two other Klimts were bought in 1985, again privately.
But at this time, Klimt was not such a subject of fascination, right?
No, no, I agree with you. I mean, I think in the mid 80s, he hadn't yet become this kind of globally sought after and recognized and loved artist in the way he is today. I mean, now you've got this sort of incredible uh, desire for Klimt. People know the famous images, the kiss, the golden Bloch-Bauer. They know them. The students live with them as posters on their walls, and they are incredibly well known, and it's
And in
totally
terms of
international. Mm.
sorry, in terms of importance between the Adele Bloch-Bauer one and Elisabeth Lederer, what would you?
Yes. So the Adela Bloch-Bauer is a golden period portrait of Adela from 1907. So it is painted in that incredible distinctive style with the gold leaf and the all the jewel-like mosaic-like detail that is coming out of the secession. It's got that sort of element of the fusion of the secessionist aesthetic of the decorative with the portrait element. And then you've got a few years later, because this portrait comes from around 1916, his Klimt in his mature, fully resolved example of his great commissioned portraits, which have evolved into a different type of painterly style. So you no longer have the gold elements, but what you have is this incredible mosaic-like palette of color. He's already at this point seen the Fauves, he's seen the work of Matisse. He's absorbed those elements into his own very distinctive style, where I think one of the big features of this incredible portrait is how he fuses the the foreground and the background, essentially, how he places his figure, dresses her, and then positions her in this incredible, almost regal frontal pose against this extraordinary background of Chinese
But what
motif.
is the most desirable?
Hmm?
What is the most desirable between?
Well, look, I think that the Golden Block Bar has this international fame and allure, and it's a complete one-off and unobtainable, and it's sitting in the museum, and people make the sort of pilgrimage from all over the world to see it, don't they? And here you have one of his last great full-scale, fully completed portraits still in private hands that can actually, be acquired now in this auction. I mean, this is an incredible moment for Klimt. This is one of the greats.
And how can you give a value for this painting?
Well, in looking at the value here, and we've set estimate on request in excess of $150 million, we've benchmarked this against other paintings by Klimt that have sold either at auction or privately over recent years. So we discussed already the Golden Block Bauer, but that's nearly 20 years ago now. I mean, that would now have increased hugely in value. We looked at the second Bloch Bauer painting, which is the Adele Bloch Bauer II, the later 1912 portrait that's painted with the white background, that is similar in format to this. It's taller but narrower, that resold privately for $150 million, reportedly in around 2015. And we also looked at, obviously, the auction price that we achieved here in London 2 years ago for the Woman with the Fan that sold for $108 million, which was the smaller square format painting right at the end of his life. It was the last picture on his easel when he died. They didn't even sign it because it was, right at the end of his life. So we looked at these benchmarks, but also really it's more than that, because I think a painting like the Elizabeth Lederer is a masterpiece of 20th century art. So really we're also looking at the prices that have been paid for great masterpieces of 20th century figurative art, whether it's Modigliani, Picasso, even Warhol, those great pieces.
And it could be surprised to think that he bought Cubism, Klimt, and only sculpture by Matisse and not painting.
Yes, exactly.
Why is that?
Well, look, I think that the Klimt came first, as I said, in 78 with the,
And he was
then,
living with them?
and the Cubism started to become a real.
Sorry, was he living with a Klimt?
What did?
Well, was he living with a Klimt in his?
Yes, very much so.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, he lived with his whole collection in the apartment in New York, the Klimts on different floors and in different rooms. Then came the absolute obsessive passion for Cubism and the focus on these four giants, Picasso, Braque, Léger, and Juan Gris, that, as we know, formed the core of this unbelievable gift, lifetime gift to the Met.
Yes.
And then, when he died, further works followed on there. So there was the Cubism collection, which was really a lifelong passion and study and focus. And then, as you say, he also interestingly collected these 6 bronzes by Matisse, which is an incredibly comprehensive and ranging, group of works.
Why sculpture and not painting by Matisse? This is strange, no?
It's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting. I mean, I think the sculpture also forms an interesting bridge with this interest in the figurative and in this case the female form. I mean, Matisse himself was constantly playing with this interplay between painting, sculpture, and in his case, the cutout, the collages. And so there obviously was this interest in this aspect of creativity, and it played very well in Leonard Lauder's collection alongside the paintings in the Cubist. It was a very interesting additional element.
But when did he buy the Matisse?
The Matisses were acquired at a similar time in the 80s, and each one, it's quite hard to put together this depth of rare pieces by Matisse. I mean, they come up incredibly rarely, and actually to have the three heads of Henriette, numbers 1, 2, and 3, is quite exceptional. They're each acquired separately.
But he doesn't have the back, in fact, which is surprising again.
Yeah.
By Matisse, right?
Exactly.
It's very contemporary.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, well.
It's very focusing, very professional in his collection in a way.
Very. So I think that, what so many people that I've talked to since we announced the collection who knew Leonard and had that, the pleasure of getting to know him as a collector and talked so much about, how much he studied. I mean, he didn't, he also has, was very, very passionate about the learning aspect of how you studied and informed yourself and read and looked and the study centers are just as important as the actual art gifts. They provide a legacy for future generations, and I think but for him personally that was also a whole journey of discovery.
So what is the target of collectors that could buy, for example, the big Elizabeth Lederer? Well, how many person in the world do you think? Like 25?
Well, I hope so. I hope so. I think that it's totally global. And I think that a portrait like the Elizabeth Lederer could sit in any great museum in the world. And actually, there are not so many museums in the world that own a great Klimt portrait. I mean, in New York, obviously, you've got the Neue Gallery and you've got the Met, who own the portrait of also of Elizabeth's mother, the Serena Lederer, which is the early portrait that looks quite Whistler-esque in the white diaphanous dress. And then you've got, of course, paintings in Vienna, in Japan, in Israel. But there aren't so many in the great museums of the world. So I think the target collectors are both private and institutional. And the private collectors are totally global, because we know already from our experience of selling The Woman with the Fan 2 years ago that there's a huge interest in Asia for Klimt, a huge love and passion for the artist. So we definitely would expect interest from Asia, not least because also the iconography of the painting resonates with the aesthetic from, Klimt has drawn on these very, very strong Chinese motifs that he himself was obsessed with and collected, as did the Lederer family.
He was collecting what, sorry?
He collected Chinese and Southeast Asian artifacts, screens, textiles, figurines. I mean, it was all the rage in Vienna at the time. I mean, we know obviously from Paris too, this interest in Japanism and chinoiserie that was a huge thing at the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th, going into the beginning of the 20th century. And so, like Van Gogh, who collected Japanese prints, Klimt was also collecting prints, and then from China, these extraordinary textiles. And she looks like she's actually dressed in a Chinese imperial robe from the period.
But how many persons are able to buy that in the world who are already known as collectors of this caliber?
Yes, I think you're right. I think that if you look at the big buyers from Asia, from America, from Europe, from Middle East, there are a good 20 to 25 who are able to buy it. That doesn't mean that we're going to have 25 bidders on the night, but they're definitely people at that top level who we've seen active, whether it was, for instance, on the Picasso that we sold from the Emily Fisher Landau collection, for example, that kind of price level, or buyers who've been buying also actively privately at the $150 million kind of level, who are contenders. And I think this painting has all of the ingredients of one of the great masterpieces to come to auction. It has this incredible history. It has an amazing provenance now. It has phenomenal condition. It is iconic. It is from his sort of most realized period, his mature periods. It has all these, absolutely breathtaking elements that make it something truly exceptional.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Judith.